Hey, Nelson, alcoholic addict. That is not my real name. That is my trucker call name when I'm driving my 18-wheeler. No, I'm just kidding. It's a pen name that I use here at LOL Sober. I was at a great meeting recently where the topic was finding faith in sobriety. And someone shared the old slogan that the opposite of fear is faith. And I found myself nodding along because I do find that when my faith is strong, my fear is not. And when my fear is strong, I'm usually struggling with faith. Usually I can have one or the other, not both. I can't be fearful and faithful at the same time. I either trust the universe or I don't. But a few minutes later at the same meeting, someone gently disagreed, saying he thought the opposite of faith was despair, like the idea of nothingness. That on one end is faith and one end is despair and nothingness. His point was that you can be faithful and get scared in this world. So technically you could feel both. And I guess that's true if you're very faithful and you go swimming in an ocean and sharks start chasing you, like you're gonna swim like crazy, right? But, so I don't know if I agree with that, but maybe it's more true than I originally thought when he first said it. And he made the point, though, that you can't have faith and also have despair. And that's probably true. He said he thinks that when you feel despair in the world, it means you probably don't have enough faith. And so his opinion was that despair is the opposite of faith. I found myself nodding along again because he made some good points. I liked listening to him talk about it and think about it. And I didn't think that on a spectrum with faith at one end, that despair would be the polar opposite, but his rationale was interesting, and I always try to be open-minded about the whole faith thing. And then someone else jumped in and gently disagreed with both fear and despair as the opposites of faith. And he said he thought the opposite of faith is certainty. And his point was that when you are absolutely certain of anything, you squeeze out the possibility of faith. You're saying or that this is the answer with no wiggle room. And he said something that I've always believed ever since somebody said it to me, which is that one of the most valuable phrases in life is, I don't know. And yet I'm often afraid to say that because I want you to think I'm smart and I have all the answers. And I want to believe that about myself too. So I hesitate sometimes to say I don't know. And I think what I like the most about envisioning faith at one end of the spectrum and certainty at the other is that gives me a reassuring feeling about faith. I like being around people who have strong faith, but also lots of questions, because I'm not sure faith in anything can ever be said with 100% absolute certainty. Some of the people who have turned me off the most over the years are those who say that their religion is the only answer. Their God is the only God, and that there's a book that was written 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago or 800 years ago, and that should be your handbook and your only handbook on how to live. Yeah, doesn't go over well with me. Early on in recovery, I'll never forget I was explaining to someone with a lot of sober time what I liked and disliked about 12-step programs. And I remember I was talking fast. I'm a used car salesman still probably, but I was really one back then. And this dude listened and he was calm. And at the end, he just gently said to me, this is just a suggestion, but I want to tell you a phrase you might consider using more often. And I'm not sure you've ever heard it before or used it before. And that phrase is, I don't know. You should try thinking that and saying that more often than you do. I was offended by it for 10 seconds, but we laughed and I accepted. He made his point. It was a good one. The more certain I am, the more I need to throw a penalty flag on myself and investigate why do I think I'm so sure. I've found myself talking a lot lately, offering lots of opinions that weren't requested, spewing all sorts of nonsense about football games and what restaurants are good or bad, and all kinds of other stuff that the world just didn't ask me for. I'm better off listening and contemplating or just being quiet, just listening to birds, whatever. And I'm better off giving you my opinion when you ask me for it, not when I'm just feeling it. And honestly, what exactly do I know in life? Like, seriously, what do I know? what do I actually have certainty about? Like, maybe how to get sober? Yeah, not really. All I really know is what works for me, and that's what I should stick to, you know? Do I know exactly how to raise kids? Like, come on, give me a break. I'm not sure anybody quite knows the perfect way to raise kids. Every kid's different. It's complicated, you know? What about even football? I love football. I watch football all the time. A friend asked me to help him with making some NFL picks recently for a pool that he was in, and I follow the NFL at an incredible level because it's part of my job to know what's going on, but I really like it. So I can tell you injury status of almost every single team in the league. I know depth charts. I know the statistics of pretty much every good player. I've watched every single team play at least one game this year. I listen to podcasts all the time from former players and other experts about teams. I know as much as you could probably know without playing in the NFL. And when I pick NFL games, it's a complete disaster. It's a coin flip whether I get it right or not. In fact, if you just listened to my picks and did the opposite, you might end up being better off, you know? So a conversation that ends about faith that ends with discussing NFL picks might sound silly, but I think it's quite powerful because whether it's football or religion or faith or the best gas station on the East Coast, uh, it's a reminder to me that the things I think I know inside and out, I'm still better off starting from a place of uncertainty, which is the opposite of certainty, which I now think might be in the conversation for being the opposite of faith. So thank you so much for letting me share.